And good morning. It is Friday, January the 16th of 2026. Time is 8:06. I am Chad Holmes. Ian Welsh across the way. It is the Friday edition of the Chad Holmes Show here on 98.9 WXCO, online at WXCO.FM, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app, also on the WXCO YouTube channel. And to start things off this morning, very happy to welcome into Wausau and welcome into our studio one of the candidates for governor of the state of Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes. And great to see you, and thank you for stopping in.
Absolutely. Really excited to be back here in the area, and thanks so much for having me on the show. Really excited to have this conversation.
Absolutely. And joining me as well is our WXCO news reporter, Isabella Nieto, and Isabella will be asking some questions as well. But I wanted to start off because this week in the headlines, I think this will be the first gubernatorial candidate campaign in the state of Wisconsin that I'll have to ask a question like this. You have a president of the United States that is threatening a governor and a mayor of a neighboring state within, 20 minutes of the state border in Wisconsin. I want to ask you, as governor, how would you deal with either military action from the federal government or the threat of losing federal funding because you have to do this or that? It is something that is new, I think, to a Wisconsin governor. Could you give your thoughts on, as a governor, how would you deal with such situations?
Yeah, and it is a very interesting set of circumstances, very unique. We have not had to deal with experience, at least not in my lifetime, but we don't take the threats, we don't take the threats lightly. We also understand that this is the way that President Donald Trump governs. It's by fear. But when you're trying to instill fear into domestic affairs, it is the most absurd, insane thing you can think of. And the worst part is that you do have some leaders who say, well, we'll just comply so that we don't have to deal with the brunt of the president's aggression. And I refuse to put the state of Wisconsin in that position. Donald Trump has already done untold damage to Wisconsin. And you can look at the impacts of tariffs on our small businesses, on our family farmers, destabilizing rural economies. We can look at the impact to taxpayers with the quote unquote so-called big, beautiful bill that is going to cost us incredible sums of money. He has already done the damage. And the fact is, he's using these fear and scare tactics to try to get people in positions to go along with his political agenda, which does nothing to serve the people of Wisconsin. It only serves his own interests. It only serves the interests of wealthy donors who got him elected. That is not fair. It is not acceptable. And when the time calls for it, as governor, I will stand up to Donald Trump every step of the way in defense of people in the state of Wisconsin. These very unconstitutional, unlawful orders, these attempts to use his own private military forces, essentially, in communities across the country, is completely unacceptable. Now, look, we all want safe communities. We all want to ensure that people can go outside, live freely, be themselves, and not have to worry about the threat of violence. But we see a threat of violence that is actually coming from Donald Trump's, again, private military force that is wreaking havoc in community. Surveys have gone out. People feel less safe with what Donald Trump is doing. And not only can we not accept it, we need people en masse to stand up and reject it. And that's what's happening. There is a grassroots response that is forming, that is bubbling up. People who've never been involved in politics, people who typically saw themselves as apolitical, people who, would once just stay in the house, and even some folks who think, oh, yeah, well, those are some quiet folks. They don't get involved in this kind of stuff. They're stepping up because this has gotten so bad and it is completely unacceptable.
Can I ask you quickly before we give it to Isabella? I said yesterday on my program that I think the people are ahead of the politicians right now.
Well, that's always the case.
But
I'll be honest.
But I'm going to ask you a question based on that. What do you want to see from people that are elected to office have a certain level of power
Mhm.
to hold people like Donald Trump accountable, and yet it feels like they're waiting till November. What should the party, what should leaders be doing between now and then, which is still 11 months away?
Yeah, by and large, people have been ahead of politicians. That's the whole purpose, the whole role of organizing, to move the needle, and also to create the conditions that make it possible for politicians to do the right thing.
Mhm.
But we also need politicians who understand organically what is going on in society, what is going on in communities, and how to appropriately respond. I got my start in organizing. The reason I ran for political office is because of my experience, my time as an organizer, not getting the response that I felt we deserved from our elected officials. And I still feel as if I'm an organizer in many regards, more so than a politician, because anytime I've ever put my name on the ballot, it's been about moving the needle. It's been about pushing the narrative. The narrative. It's been about ensuring that we improve quality of life for people. So with that being said, wait into November. I mean, 10 months is a long time.
Mhm.
We are 2 weeks into 2026, and we see how things have quickly devolved. If things can happen this quickly in 2 weeks of this year, or even 1 year of Donald Trump's second presidency, imagine what more can happen in 10 months. We don't have the luxury to sit around and wait. People are being priced out of healthcare. People are being priced out of their homes. People are being put out of their living condition, and things are only getting worse. 10 months is a lifetime for far too many people. And if you are on the brink, this 10 months could be make or break. And we need to make sure that we are doing what we can with the power that we have to organize, to provide mutual aid and assistance for folks who are struggling, people who need that relief. But also, we can't just say, well, we'll let him do whatever he wants to do for the next 10 months until the midterms are decided. That's lazy. And it also disregards the people that you are elected to represent if you are in office right now. So my encouragement to people who are frustrated, or have frustrated constituencies, represent areas that have been dealing with the impacts of this presidency. And I say it that way because there's not a single district, a single legislative district, a single congressional district, county, or municipality that has not been dealing with these impacts. And so, as a leader, it is incumbent upon you to challenge systems that make it difficult, more challenging for the people you represent to live. And this is across the board. If this were a Democratic president, I would be opposed to it as much. The time for partisanship, and saying, well, ignoring the follies of somebody in your party. That's what's gotten us into this mess in the first place. And I'm not afraid to call out or challenge anybody in my party. But right now, this is what Donald Trump is doing, his own political will that's being exerted, and Republican politicians like Tom Tiffany, who are with him every step of the way, even in his most wrong moments, even in his most absurd, frustrating, and destabilizing moments for communities.
There's some issues that are involving people here in the rural areas of Wisconsin that I'm sure that you've been hearing about as well. I know Isabella has a couple of questions about those topics.
So here in Marathon County, we are looking at some, green energy companies are wanting to come in and put some solar and wind farms on land in Marathon County. And residents are concerned. They're concerned that they're losing valuable farmland that contributes to that rural economy. What would you say to people who are concerned about losing that land and possibly, losing that input to the economy as well?
Yeah, I can tell you, I've spent a lot of my time, a lot of my work has been around, clean energy. We look at the rising costs of electricity in this state and in this country. It seems to be climbing higher and higher with each utility bill. And if we have these instances where people are opposed to a project, I think that the will of the people is the law of the land. And I think that concept has sort of been lost along the way. And not only has it been lost, we see people like Donald Trump just trample over that whole idea. People like Robin Voss just trample over that idea. And I do believe that, these are areas of compromise. I do think that it's very important for people to have adequate and accurate information, because there are folks who just simply don't tell the truth about what solar or what wind would mean for a community. And, again, as a proponent of clean energy, because we get a significant portion of our energy generated through coal in Wisconsin. There's no coal to be dug here. There's no oil to drill for. We do have some opportunities with solar and with wind to create our own energy, thus lowering our energy costs. To that point, if we have community opposition to a project, I think that opposition should be respected, but also want to make sure people have the right information about uh, how land use is still achievable. And look at the level of development in some of these areas. Like we have, a lot of folks in the legislature, unfortunately, who will vote to build over our wetlands, which makes flooding much more of a possibility for communities. We have this system of, a lot of our, crop rotation. You look at, what's been incentivized at the federal level. It's monocrops that are decreasing our soil health, making it almost impossible to grow anything else. So I think that we need to have a more comprehensive conversation around these things. I've seen some unique circumstances where, there may be solar that comes in. There's, solar farms that are being built, but the land is still able to be farmed in different ways. I think there are many opportunities, and if we're looking at a private decision, whether a private landowner says, "Yeah, I want to have a solar farm," yeah, sure, that private landowner should be able to do so. But we're not talking about anything that makes the land completely unusable for permanently, right? And it has been my experience and it has been my conversation with so many people who are losing their livelihoods, people who are being impacted by these tariffs, that they need additional revenue streams. If they can generate their own energy, if they can sell that energy back to the utility company, or even if it's with microgrids and other opportunities, they want to be able to take advantage of that, and we should be able to let them.
And more to the rural economy as well. In Wisconsin Rapids and around central Wisconsin, we have paper mills that are closing. What would you, as governor, do to kind of bolster the rural industry to kind of replace some of those jobs that we're losing due to the paper mills closing?
So paper mills. I just had a roundtable discussion about healthcare. We know how many rural healthcare centers and rural hospitals that are closing. And for us to be able to create an economy that works for everybody, I look at industry, even, where I'm from in Milwaukee, the factory that my grandfather worked, after he served in World War II, moved to Milwaukee, worked at A.O. Smith. That plant doesn't exist anymore. Where my dad worked, on an assembly line, that factory doesn't exist anymore. And the idea that places like that close because of greed, they move those jobs overseas. And paper is a different industry, but where my dad worked, where my grandfather worked, those jobs were moved overseas. The operations didn't shut down. We also had some issues with automation as well, which is very parallel to what we're seeing with AI. But what I do believe is that we can spur new businesses, small businesses, local businesses. We have to invest in Main Street the way that we see larger cities invested in as well. We got a lot of folks who come to areas like here in Wausau for recreation opportunities. Uh, the governor just put out a press release, talked about how much money, in tourism and recreation is generated. I believe we can do that even more. I believe that Wisconsin can be a recreation capital of the world. I've talked to a lot of people from out of the state who visit here often, whether they fish in our trout streams, that are unfortunately dealing with the impact of climate change because those streams are warming. And if those streams continue to warm at this rate, those trout won't have a place to spawn. That's another sector of our economy that will be completely lost. And so, while I can't just sit here and govern by edict and say this will be the industry, but I do believe that as we can go back to the last conversation about clean energy, we should be manufacturing more of those parts, those solar panels. We should have more manufacturing opportunities for those right here in Wisconsin. Our windmills, thousands of components in a single windmill. Those are all parts that should be assembled and manufactured right here in Wisconsin. And where we see one industry go away, like paper mills, we can easily, I won't say easily, but we can, more seamlessly replace those industries with emerging ones.
I know you're limited on time, but I got one question. I think Isabella has one more question, just so
Yeah.
you know. And I want to kind of touch on you mentioned the fact about healthcare. And there's so many layers to it, but I'm going to ask you this time around. I hope in the future we have more opportunities to talk because there's so many issues.
I would love the opportunity to talk again.
But I want to ask you about here in the year 2026, and you mentioned it. I think so many people know about the hospital closures in parts of western Wisconsin, and the fact that there are people that live in rural areas that have to go multiple hours in order to get health care. A number of years back, just a few years back, I got sick. I'm lucky here in Wausau, we have hospitals, and I was in a hospital for a week. And there are people that are having babies or getting sick, and they have to go multiple hours to get health care in 2026. You said it, you can't govern by edict, but put your hat on. What would you try to lead the state? What direction in order to change that? Because again, it just seems to be frankly ridiculous that we're in this situation.
It is absolutely ridiculous that we're in this situation. God forbid you're in certain parts of the state and you need to get to an emergency room. God forbid you're an expecting mother who needs to get to an appointment. And one of the things I've been talking about throughout the entirety of this campaign from day one is my day one pledge to expand Badger Care in Wisconsin. It's not as if there aren't people who need to use these clinics or visit these hospitals. It's the fact of who can, who is insured, who can go to the doctor without worrying about a surprise bill that continues to be a barrier, continues to be an impediment for people who want a basic checkup. And God forbid that checkup leads to a diagnosis, or God forbid you end up, with a slip and fall that can happen to any of us. I had a story in Green Bay, a woman who had a slip and fall, was not eligible for Badger Care, was not insured, had a tough time, racked up bills, went into debt, was no longer able to stay in her home. So we're talking about just completely devastating, destabilizing instances that are all too often somebody's reality, or even medical bankruptcy. And that's why expansion of Badger Care is a number one. It is a day one priority of mine. I've said it once, I'll say it again, I'll say it till we get to inauguration day and the legislature is in their first session. And I'm not just campaigning to become governor. I'm campaigning to get a majority in the assembly and in the Senate. I am running for governor to ensure that we have an active majority and an administration that governs with absolute urgency. And I've said that I will not sign a state budget until Badger Care is expanded in Wisconsin. And we're going to fight to even get a public option for Badger Care so that people who are priced out of the market have an opportunity, because 133% of poverty is not a lot of money. 150% of poverty is not a lot of money. 200% poverty is still not a lot of money. So for those folks who are in that gap, they need to have affordable health care options. And this will remain my priority, because if people are insured, they're going to go to those doctor visits. And this is how we keep our rural health care, our rural clinics open.
Isabella, final question.
More on some of your priorities. You've touched on several of them here today. Is there anything that maybe we haven't asked about that you would want people to know about what you would do if you were to come into the governorship?
Well, we need to ensure that we are closing loopholes that allow the wealthy to get away without paying their fair share. We need to give that relief to working class individuals and households. Middle class families need some tax relief. And if out of state companies are able to take advantage of a lot of tax breaks through, we'll say, agriculture manufacturing tax credit as an example, we should make sure that our family farmers and our small businesses get a larger piece of the pie than people who are already wealthier than the overwhelming majority than the rest of us. Those people have gotten relief. They've gotten everything they've needed. Their net worth is in the billions, which is an unimaginable sum of money for some folks. They don't need more relief. It is the people who are caught in the middle, the people who are working hard every day, playing by the rules, who still can't get ahead, who need relief. And we also have to make sure that our schools are fully funded. We at least have to get to the 2/3 commitment that the state has for public education funding. That commitment has not been honored. I'm a proud product of public schools, and I want to ensure that we have high quality education in every corner of this state, in every school district, in every community, because there are examples where you have a world-class school or school that's quote unquote performing at the top of the pack, but 5 miles down the road it's a completely different story because schools are not equally resourced. We have to end that era, and we also have to end the paycheck economy in Wisconsin as well by putting more money in the pockets of hardworking people. And when the clock struck 12, 18 or 19 states saw some increase in their minimum wage. In Wisconsin, we're still at 7.25, which is shameful.
Real quick, one more final point,
Mhm.
because I think it's important for people to know the reasons, and I think you kind of elaborate on some of the reasons. But you went through a bruising Senate race
Mhm.
a few years ago. You've been the lieutenant governor. You've been involved in, as you say, in organizing. Why did you decide you wanted to do this again? Wanted to get back into the mix in this way, elected politics? And I'm going to use a little example. We saw a social media posting this week where the Republican Party of Wisconsin couldn't even put the right picture of you up there. And again, it just feels like, I give great respect to anybody that wants to be involved in elected politics, because it's not easy.
Not easy.
Why did you decide that you want to go through this yet again?
It is my life experience, and I so firmly believe in the things that I've talked about since I first stepped on the scene in the state assembly in 2012. And I believe them because I've lived them, or I've been that close to them, have been adjacent to those issues. Everything I'm talking about is essentially based on some level of personal experience. And this moment couldn't be more urgent. Times are getting more difficult, more challenging for people all across this country, but specifically in this state. And Wisconsin has been a leader before. And I believe in our opportunity to be a leader once again. This moment calls for it, this moment demands it. And we have to appropriately respond and create a new era of opportunity in Wisconsin. It can happen, but it takes the political will to do so. We can't do half measures. We can't just show up and govern as if things are okay. We can't just sit here and govern as if all things are equal, because they absolutely are not. So based on my experience as lieutenant governor, having traveled this state extensively, having put in more work than anybody else in this primary field when it comes to delivering opportunity, having traveled this state, having been a part of 2 state budgets with Governor Evers, going line by line, prioritizing how we were going to improve quality of life for people. And we did a whole lot of work in 2018 to rescue this state from the former governor. And it also took a lot of work in the 4 years that I was lieutenant governor to ensure that we undid many of the harms and much of the damage that was done by the previous governor. But there's still so much more work to do. And I believe that this is the moment to take Wisconsin to the next level, to places we have yet to see, and also base it on our incredibly rich, productive, and progressive past. I truly believe that, history has been or will be one of the greatest informing factors of what we can be. Like I said, we've been bold before. We have had incredible leadership that put Wisconsin on the map, that, gave us our name. Our family farmers are the backbone of agriculture in this state, and our state's agriculture is world renowned because of it. Our manufacturing history, we built this world, we built this country. And I believe that whatever the next era of manufacturing and industry is in this country, Wisconsin will be on the forefront, and I'm going to see to it.
Former Lieutenant Governor, candidate for the governorship in 2026, Mandela Barnes. Thank you again for visiting us here in our studios. And as the campaign continues, hope to get a chance to talk to you about so many of the other
For
issues
sure.
out there.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
Absolutely. That's Mandela Barnes. We're going to take a quick time out and come back with more Chat Home Show on 98.9 WXCO.
And we're clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.